Hello everyone, Revan619 here, how the devil are you? Today we're going to be doing something slightly a little bit different on build review. We're going to be looking at Craze Gaming, and the reason we're going to be looking at him is he actually commented to ask if we could look at one of his builds. So this guy I've seen a lot in search. There's only 6 or 7 YouTubers that are really hardcore algorithm gamers, because whenever you search Elden Ring build, it's only these 6 or 7 people that come up, and Craze Gaming is one of them. But when I was first going through the builds, I was looking more for people that were putting out a lot of misinformation and gold sellers, and Craze Gaming, he hadn't seemed to intentionally put out any misinformation, and he wasn't a gold seller, so I hadn't actually looked at his build yet. So now that he's commented to have a quick look, so let's have a quick little look of what he's doing. So the sort of videos he's putting out is 5 must-have weapons, 10 things you probably didn't know, ultimate one-shot, so that's probably just the lightning AoE spell. 6 Ashes of Wars that just became broke, so again talking about patches there. Bleed builds just came even more better, that's talking about some of the other patches and stuff. So he's definitely an algorithm gamer, which you can respect that hustle, and he's playing multiple other games as well. He's got some No Man's Sky in there. Honestly, not tried that one since since launch actually, because that was a god awful launch. I don't even know the state of the game. But anyway, the build that I'm interested in looking at today, because I'm a big fan of Arcane and Bleed builds, is Elden Ring. Perfect Bleed build, breaks the game, Arcane scaling, and Bloodloss is OP. One hell of a title. This man could be selling lessons on how to play the algorithm. So the concept of this build is using the bleed stats effect, as you might be able to tell. One of the weapons he shows off is the Mogwin Spear, because the weapon art can do quite a lot. The main problem with this weapon art is it is very PvE heavy, because unfortunately you can't really do much other than stand still, so you sort of need to get into a good spot to cast it to be able to catch mobs. The the normal one-handed and two-handed moveset is a heavy pipe, which I'm not a big fan of. The other 2 weapons that he's showing off is the pole blade and the rivers of blood. 2 very good bleed weapons. So we're actually going to focus on this, because obviously the Mogwin Spear is a strength-based weapon, the other 2 are dex-based weapons, so if you're going to be splitting your stats between 2 of them, you're not really going to have an effective build at meta levels. But if you're going off into late-game PvE, you can obviously do both of them very easily, like your post-150 builds. They'll benefit from being able to use all the weapons. So what I'm going to do is focus on the pole blade and the rivers of blood for reviewing this. And obviously we're not going to detract points for the strength investment he has to go into. So he's playing at 120, so most people are either putting out builds at 150, 200, or some of the madmen at 400. So this guy's actually gone under sort of the playable area, which is good. It's actually much better to be able to go under. So I can actually give him a leeway of 5 levels, because he's gone under. So he's gone to 40 vigor. Honestly, I'd much rather see that being 50 minimum by 120, but to each their own. 25 mind. This was before 1.04, so again, I can give some leeway here, because 16 mind now is the same as what 20 used to be, so I feel like you don't really need to go up to 25, because obviously he's got 130 FP, but at 16 you have 100 FP, so you don't need that. Endurance is 30, which isn't too bad. You could even drop that down to save some points. Strength, obviously, he's gone up to 24, because he needs the minimum requirements for Mogwin Spear, and he's gone up to 27 dexterity, because of some of the other weapons he's playing with, and he's got up to 55 arcane. On any bleed build, you minimum really want 45, because that's one of the first breakpoints for actually bleed build up. So on a weapon with the arcane bleed, how quickly the bleed status build up is up to 45, and these weapons do scale over 50, so again, absolutely fine there. You can go all the way up. So those are the main stats. So let's talk about what talismans he's picked on here. So for gear, he's obviously had to put on the white mask, because when you get bleed procs, that you do increase damage. You can use or not use it, it's up to you, but you might as well use it for the concept of build. He's using a lot of blood, so when he gets those procs, both of these will apply, so he'll do even more damage. If you're using a seppuku build, this will apply to your own seppuku use. He's using the Shard of Alexander. This is to obviously increase the damage of your ashes. He's using the Godfrey icon, because it's, I believe that the concept here is, because it's a charged ability on Mogwin Spear, that will increase it. Because we're not going to be using Mogwin Spear, this one we won't use, but again, not going to deduct points there, because that is actually a good use there, so he's not putting out any misinformation there. And then his last one, he's gone for one of the source seals to get some of his, well, this one, he's using it is increasing his arcane faith, intelligence, and mind. do not suggest this for the defense minuses, because obviously you've got the two versions, one that gives only a slight debuff and one that gives a big debuff to defenses. Both of them unnecessary on this build. We actually don't really need to be using them. So we're not going to use this talisman at all, because obviously we're taking big defense minuses that we don't need to. And of course he's only got 39 poise, which is very low. And one of the things he talks about in his build is sometimes you can get interrupted in PvP for the startup of a lot of your ashes. That's because he's not using poise. So we're actually going to look at some of the stats of improving it, but we're going to do it a little bit differently. We're actually going to look at it in game rather than from the menus like I would do normally, so I can actually show you the AR scalings. So if we actually head over to the level up station, and what we're going to do here is we're going to get the 21 dexterity we need for both our weapons, and then we're going to show you that as we go up from Arcane, you can see Rivers and Blood and the Pole Blade increasing in damage. So 45 is the bleed cap. So then that's where you first want to start, and then you can go up to 50 and you can see the damage still keeps going up, and it starts to slow down at 50, but it still goes up quite nicely. So hitting 50, good idea. Going over it, still good. So for a 120 build, like I'm saying, for PvE and PvP, it is good to try to get 50 to 60 vigor. So we're going to go straight up to 60. 25 is a fairly good breakpoint. If we're using a lot of Ashes Wars, 16 mind is also good. And we've got some points left over because a lot of people like to play at 125. So you can go 3 points into Arcane there, or you can go 3 points into Endurance. I'm actually going to pick the Endurance for poise breakpoint related reasons, because I know on the Rivers of Blood with 20 Endurance what poise I can get to. So we'll hit that in there and we'll confirm that. So now we can see that Rivers of Blood is the heavier weapon, so we're going to optimize armor based on Rivers of Blood. As you can see, I've changed the talismans. We've gone Bulgo, the Lord of Blood one, the Shard of Alexander, and Erdtrue's Favor +2. This gives us more health, more carry weight, and more stamina, so this means we'll be able to fight longer, harder, stronger, along with more poise. So if we start optimizing the armor, the best thing to always start, if you can get away with it, is with veteran pieces. So the chest especially, then we'll check the legs and the hands to see what we can get away with. So with the white mask and the full veteran set, well, that's 92 there. But I know for a fact that with this amount of stamina and endurance I've had, we can actually then put on the bull goat legs. So we have 100 poise. There's not much we can do more with the gloves here to optimize poise specifically. So if I tried to swap any of them, then we're not really going to be able to get anything out of that to do that. So yeah, so bull goats piece, veterans chest, veterans gloves, and then the white mask along with our talismans. Because like, as you can see here, even if I swap them around, we're not going to see too much improvement happening here. So these are pieces we can put. So 100 poise, very good point. We can then swap between our Rivers of Blood and our Pole Blade. And we've even got some other weapon options that we can use with these setups here. Some of the other weapons that you can quick swap to is you can have 2 bleed Antspur rapiers. So you can apply rot and bleed there. You could even use the 2 daggers of Reduva or any other bleed-infused daggers if you wanted. So you could put on some daggers with some other Ashes of War. And you can even use any whips that together add up to only 6. So especially if you've bleed-infused them. So you can play around with some other movesets. So if you want to use, say, the whips with some different Ashes of Wars, or you also want to use the Antspur's Rapiers with some different Ashes of Wars, as well as just the Rivers of Blood and the Antspur and the Pole Blade, this means we've got some more options to go and play with here. And even if you're going for whips, you can also swap the Shard of Alexander to, say, to the Claw Talisman. You can even use the Raven chest piece, so you can do increased jumping attacks, because one of the really good things about dual whips is if you use it with quick step or bloodhound step and go mostly for jumping attacks, you can do a lot of damage whilst also building up bleed. So it's just another option that you can play with. And yeah, the movesets for all the other weapons, the other swaps, not too bad. So you're not that limited with these builds. And obviously, normally when I talk about builds, I only talk about one weapon, because swapping weapons and talismans on the fly is sometimes a little bit more advanced than people like to play with. But if we go back to looking at the concept of the build and what he's talking about, overall, he also talks about that if you can go up into the faith investments, you can pick up some of the blood spells, and you can do a little bit more of that. So if we were to go to higher levels, where you can, say, a 150 variant, so if we quickly bring this up here, because I didn't already just quickly do that. So we pop in what we need for everything here. So 21... we can go back up to our 50 here, 28. So say this is where we were for 120. So if you also wanted to add in some casting and you were, say, playing at higher levels, what you could do is going up to that 150 point is you could increase yourself up to 17 Arcane. You can go up to more Mind. You don't really need to increase any of the other stuff here, so we'll say 71 here. And then you could also add on some of the spells, so like the bleed wasps and some other things. But that's the only thing I would do. It's basically, if you go up to 150, it's just more of the same. It's just more damage, and yeah, so it's like you don't really need to go up there, but it's for those who did do. That's the path you can take. Is you obviously increase the Arcane, you increase the Mind, and then you can add on some of the blood spells. But looking at the overall concept of the build itself, no misinformation here. Like I said, he's trying to show off some extra weapons, so that's why his stats aren't optimized. So I will give a lot of leeway for that. But yeah, overall, I would have to say that this build is more of a 8 out of 10. Like, there's no horrendous misinformation. The build is very good for PvE, and it's very usable for PvP. And with small changes, only a few small changes, you can actually make it a lot more competitive for PvP. But like I said, I would focus more, especially at 120, on the dex-based weapons, and then at higher levels, if you also wanted to go into the strength-based stuff, you could. But yeah, that's it. That's all I've got time for you today. So yeah, we'll give this one a like, because not a bad build at all.